Welcome back to the channel, everybody. My name is Kyle Mao. I'm the founder here at HireUA, and we are here in Warsaw, Poland, where we have just wrapped up our first ever team building experience in person. We had 10 of us fly in from 7 different countries and had a very good time. I'm here with my social media manager, Marina, who's going to be asking me a variety of questions and doing a little bit of a fun interview here on this last day. So without further ado, take it away. So I read something many years ago from Selo, who said basically like the first hour of your day is something that you have to dedicate for you, which basically means before you walk your dog, before you make breakfast, before you get involved with anything else, you're working on building a business, make sure you take that 1 hour and do whatever you need to drive that business forward. So I've really stuck to that for the last, several years, and it's really served me well. So I try to do all my very deep, difficult work in the morning between roughly 6 a.m. and 10 a.m. After that, I tend to go to the gym, then I go to lunch, I come back, try to get some family time, and then I like to take all my calls and all my meetings in the afternoon. That's kind of how I set up my workday, and then I also try to make sure that after a certain point in the day, I can turn off and really not have to reply to any messages. So for me, that's usually by 4 or 5 p.m. because I start at 6 a.m. And overall though, being a business owner, I'm able to set my own schedule. So, my daughter's very young, she's only 10 months, but there will be a time, of course, where, she may have a soccer game or a dance recital or something of the sort. So being able to set my own schedule, and as an entrepreneur, I can then, prioritize the things that need to be prioritized in life and make sure that I'm not missing anything super important. I like cycling. I used to race in college and I was only a couple levels below professional level. And then I'm starting to race triathlons again. I grew up go-karting pretty competitively, so I actually am a pretty big fan. I like Formula One, I like IndyCar, I like all sorts of motorsports. Other than that, before I got married and, had a child, I definitely was living like a digital nomad life for a year or so, traveled around a lot. And obviously, business is a pretty big hobby of mine as well. So I have a variety of interests. I'm always finding new things that I enjoy doing outside of work, but really at the end of the day, business to me is like a video game. It's just fun. It's fun to level up. It's fun to build this business. It's fun to hire more people. So that's really, my true passion at this moment, I would say. I would say I value competence and I value effort. So for example, I really don't care where someone's gone to college. I don't really care what degree they have. I just care that they can get the job done. And I believe that the right people can be trained for the proper job. And it's much more important to have the right person give them the right training as opposed to getting someone who looks great on paper but isn't a cultural fit or just, you don't just have good chemistry with. So I value competence, I value speed, I value loyalty, and to a certain extent, I also value fearlessness. People who are willing to make mistakes because they understand that mistakes are a part of work, they're a part of life, and instead of always being afraid of making mistakes, instead you should, I don't want to say cherish them, but you should take them as an opportunity to actually learn from them and build better from them instead of getting down about them. I would say it was really like my first job. So I worked at a company called Hitachi, and I worked on very complex data systems where basically it was like the back-end storage units of many major companies. I was 21 years old and I would get a phone call like, hey, all Chase Bank's ATMs are down like in this state, or, Walmart has all these outages on all their data centers. Being that age and getting those kind of calls was when I started really, I think, understanding how to work with people, how to lead people. And what I found there was that I started off as a level 1, and basically you usually escalated those situations up, but what was needed was the level 2 guys who were more technically skilled needed to be left alone to troubleshoot the problem. So oftentimes myself would still hold ownership of that case, and it would be me talking to whoever was on the leadership team at the customer. It would be me talking to the Hitachi internal team. It'd be me coordinating everything. So I think those first moments, right when I first started my career, kind of taught me how to work with people, especially in, very critical situations. Like everything I do now in our business here at HireUA is certainly not as intensive. It's very rare that something can't wait an hour. Whereas at those times, people were losing millions every couple of minutes. So it was very critical to work with speed. I would say for the most part, not. If I was going to potentially say open an office for the company and relocate people or try to build a hub out, obviously I would take that into account of where I was living and where my family wanted to live. But for the most part, I would say, the business, the day-to-day of the business does not really impact my family's life, directly too much. Obviously it provides for their living, so I always keep that into account. The only thing I could ever see would be like taking a big risk. Like as an entrepreneur now, I've been doing this for almost 10 years, so I understand that business is always a game of risk, and those who take the biggest risks are often rewarded. I can certainly say like for sure that if I already had a family when I was going to build a business, I would have been much more risk apprehensive. Now though, I've been in the trenches long enough that, it doesn't really bother me as much, but I can definitely see why many people who want to become entrepreneurs don't ever, because of their family, because it's too stable sometimes, that 9-to-5 job. And you can make lots of arguments whether a typical 9-to-5 job is actually stable or not, but to most people it is going to seem more stable. And at the end of the day, like business is also hard. Many businesses don't make it, and that's not a reason not to start. You always owe it to yourself to at least try, but I do understand why people who have families are a little bit more risk adverse in life in general. I'll be very honest, I moved here originally because it was cheap and there were pretty girls. I'm not even going to deny that at all. So I was tired of the corporate job. I did not want to work in an office. I did not want to commute. I did not want to work 9 to 5, and I wanted to build a business. And I was living in Los Angeles at the time, where my rent was $2,000 a month. And this was back in, 2013, 2014, which means probably that same apartment these days probably rents for like $3,500, $4,000. So I knew that I was not probably going to be able to build a business while I had so many expenses. So that was really the major issue. I had a little blog at the time. I think we're about to get into that in the next couple questions, but I had a little blog. It was making like $500 to $1,000 a month. I had some savings, only about 15 to 20 grand. And I knew if I stayed in Los Angeles, like obviously I was going to run out of money really, really quickly unless the business just took off right away. So I moved up to Eastern Europe. I knew that if I did not make a single penny online, that I could ultimately last for a year and a half. So that gave me some good motivation. It was like, hey, Kyle, you've got a year and a half to figure this out and make income online. And that was ultimately what I ended up doing. And thankfully it worked out pretty well. It really was just a place that spoke to me. The people, the culture, the food, the language, just everything about it. I always really liked living in Kyiv, and it was easier too than a lot of other European countries as far as residency goes. And ultimately it was just a place that I decided to call home. The only thing I really didn't like was the weather in the winter. Not a huge fan of that as someone who's from California, but at the end of the day, I ended up buying property out there. It's still standing as of now. Obviously I'm hoping one day to be able to get out from under it, but it is what it is. And that was ultimately the people though. That's, to sum up the question, definitely the people in Ukraine definitely just make that place what it is. It was actually going way, way back in 2016, 2017. I hired an Eastern European, Denitsa from Bulgaria, who wrote content articles for me. And that was like one of the first things I saw was that, hey, people out here are really sharp and they're doing a really good job. And I'd worked with a couple Filipino and Indian VAs. I actually had one VA from the Philippines who I really liked, Choksan. But ultimately, it came time where this company was starting to get some traction, and I hired Kate, who was here this weekend in Warsaw. And within a couple days, like the way she was thinking about things and able to solve problems and able to kind of actually take responsibility of things as opposed to needing constant direction made me realize that like, hey, the talent out here in Ukraine is really good. And almost everyone I've hired since then, and many, we've placed people with 200 businesses now. A lot of people have said the same thing, like the level of critical thinking, the level of people willing just to take responsibility of stuff, to solve problems on their own without needing to be constantly handheld has proven time and time again to be one of the best attributes about Ukrainian people, which make them, fantastic virtual assistants and online remote workers. Yes, my first online business was about dating. So long story short, I wasn't very good with girls growing up, and it took me a long time to start to figure it out. So I started writing a blog, and the blog was originally called "This Blog Will Get Me in Trouble," because I was thinking like if my employer ever found it, or my mother ever found it, or like my sister, that I'd be in a lot of trouble. And ultimately, my family all did find the blog, and nothing actually happened. So that was all fine. But basically, it was me writing about getting chicks and what I had struggled with and what what I had learned, it ultimately became something much more. So then I started doing coaching where guys would, pay me to go out with them. I made a few courses, I wrote a few books, and that basically launched the brand Kyle Trouble, which is basically what I built many companies around now. So, I've kind of dropped that moniker now. I use my actual name, and I've kind of moved on from that point in my life. But that was the first online business. It did very well, and it was the catalyst that taught me a lot, taught me how to write well, taught me how to sell, and it was the catalyst for everything that, has come from that. So I consider everything that I've ever done in business to be a natural stepping stone. Everything I've ever done, there was a step that preceded it, and there's a reason why I did something, because it taught me something that I use today and what I will use in the future as well. So, perfect example off the last question, olive oil. Selo Olive is founded by myself and my partner, Martin Ehrlich, and Martin was a reader of my dating blog. He came to me and basically said, hey, I've got this family farm in Croatia. I need help with the marketing. Would you be interested in partnering up on this? So he and I went to business on that. We actually bottled the first 1,000 bottles in his garage. He did a lot of them himself. Then I took a trip and we stayed up till like 3 a.m. for a week straight, doing nothing but bottling olive oil and then basically driving it down to the post office ourselves and shipping it out. And that was pretty much how it started. So that's a perfect example of the catalyst. If I hadn't written that dating blog, I would have never met Martin, and Selo Olive never would have become what it is. So Selo Olive is all based out of Croatia. It's where the family farm is. It's near Zadar, and then it gets put into a giant tub and shipped over to California to the bottling facility. And that bottling facility, coincidentally, is actually not far from my hometown. And it gets bottled up there. From the bottling facility, it goes to a shipping facility, which is near Chicago. And then basically as customers place orders, they go and put that into the box and send it out to the customer. Basically it was just an idea. I actually had a business partner on it for the first couple months, year, and basically we said, hey, maybe there's a market to place Ukrainians with good American companies. I think living out there for so long, I had realized people were really intelligent, people were really sharp. It was a country that was very much coming up in the world. There seemed to be some sort of opportunity. So it kind of got going, and we just made a few placements, got a few testimonials, ended up hiring somebody, and then it would kind of trickle in, here and there. And then around spring of 2022, after the war had started, I actually split with that partner. And since then, since I've been all in on this business, we've done about 10x as much now. So that's on a monthly recurring revenue basis. So the company has grown, substantially over the last year and a half. We've gone from basically myself and 2 employees, Kate and Sophia, to now 12 people fully on the staff, plus a handful of other contractors. We've obviously just all met here in Warsaw, big team meeting. So lots of good stuff has happened in the last year and change. We did it in Warsaw for a variety of reasons. So one was because my executive assistant Victoria lives in Warsaw, so it made everything a lot easier that she knew where to go, she had the connections, she could make stuff happen here in Warsaw versus picking another city in Europe and basically having to do that remotely. So that was one of the major reasons why we did that. Other than that, it's just a cool place. It has a nice energy. It's very modern, it's new. We knew that there were good restaurants, good clubs, and also very importantly, it's a good hub. So Warsaw is a pretty major airport. Everybody on the team who came was able to fly in relatively directly without much issue. Some people were coming in from Ukraine via bus, so that made it easy for them as well. And all these factors combined led it to being Warsaw this year. But it was almost Italy, and then it could have been anywhere, honestly. And we've already started taking votes next year on where it's going to be. And it seems like the prevailing pick is probably going to be either Amsterdam or Barcelona. So we will see how it works out. But that is the reason why it was Warsaw this year. As to why it was now, it's been something on my mind almost for a year now. Since the team started really growing and expanding, I just thought this would be something cool to do. I would like to meet everybody in person. And as much as I obviously dig on online work and just being able to work remotely, it was just the time. Nothing is ever going to replace in-person connection and actually meeting people, face to face. Nothing is ever going to replace that. As great as remote work is, I do see why companies to a certain extent are bringing people back to the office. I'm not a fan of people doing it 5 days a week. I think that's ridiculous. Definitely there's something to be said about going and meeting someone in person. Yeah, I would do it again. I already took votes last night at the final team dinner. Like, where does everyone want to do it next year? Like I said, if you're running a remote company and you've got an opportunity to bring your whole team together, already I can tell this was well worth the investment just from a chemistry standpoint, just getting to know each other. And it's also just fun. So if you're running a remote company and there's an opportunity for everybody to come together and meet in the same place and get to know each other, I think it's a great idea. Someday I do think HireUA will probably have an office somewhere. Like, as of now, I'd probably put it in Poland, but I'm certainly not going to be making team members like relocate. It would just be like we're trying to build out a facility or a center in one specific city. That being said, would highly recommend it. Like I said, we're already planning our next one. And on top of all of that, it was just fun. We all had a good time. Yeah, if you're running a remote company and you can ideally get everyone together, you should. I think the hybrid work model is a good way of kind of meeting in that middle ground. So a lot of companies are saying, okay, you have to come back to the office, but it could just be for 2 days a week. I understand wanting everyone together in an office just for project management and continuity, but I don't think employers really care or realize too much about like how miserable commuting can be. And especially like in America, where if you are living in a certain city and you want to have any quality of life or want to keep the prices down a little bit, people might be commuting an hour, 2 hours. That's hours a week, days of their life every year that they're spent sitting in their car. So I think if you can get people together occasionally, you absolutely should, and that the benefits will pay off immensely. I think my biggest failure business-wise was attempting some very, very mediocre e-commerce stores. It was, selling crap from China. Think the fidget spinners, just garbage stuff that people will use once and then they'll never use it again. And basically what I learned was selling a crappy product to hundreds of people is really not a good way to run a business, both just from the pain in the ass standpoint, as well as just not feeling good about what you're doing. It's a lot better to sell a higher ticket service or product to fewer customers and have a lot less to deal with. It also just taught me overall about quality, and I think that's something with HireUA. We place really good people into people's businesses, quality people. Whereas if you decide, I'm gonna hire, but I'm gonna go on Fiverr and pay someone $5, you get what you pay for. Like at the end of the day, if you pay someone $5 to do a job, you're gonna get $5 worth of work. So I think that really taught me with those e-commerce businesses, like focus on higher quality products and services, and things will usually work out much, much better. And those are very fad products, like some of them, like the fidget spinners, right? Like if you get in at the right time and you sell a ton of them, you'll make a lot of money. You're always going to be chasing the next thing, chasing the next product, the next idea, the next ad. And I just don't think that's a long-term way to run a business. They should be respected. That's the best way to put it. So there should be a healthy amount of respect, maybe a little bit of fear when absolutely necessary, but for the most part, you will get better results from people by making them like you. It's no different than just being charming. So people who respect a manager when they need to, when it gets tough, someone willing to put their foot down, but also is just a likable, charming person, will I think usually get better results. It's also important that people understand that their managers will go to war for them. So like at HireUA, I tell my team all the time, like no matter what happens, I have your back with clients. Like if someone treats you like shit, I will fire them in a heartbeat. I won't even hesitate about it. And I think that has gotten really good results from our team here because they know at the end of the day that they're always going to be more important than a client. And they are. Like a client is replaceable. A plus team member can be very, very hard to replace. All right, so we've got my wife and my daughter behind the camera here now, and we're gonna do a fire drill round. My wife's gonna ask me any question that she's ever wanted to ask me. So
what is that special about Ukrainian people that you prefer working with them?
They can solve problems much better, they're willing to take responsibility more, and ultimately, I just think they're able to drive stuff to completion at a much higher level. You can give people on our team items and responsibilities and they will take it and run with it versus always needing to check up and make sure that something's done.
What do you like about the business of hiring people?
I really like this business because it's really hard to hire in America right now. It's really difficult. You got people who want like $25 to flip pizzas, and giving good people, especially after the war, good Ukrainians, good jobs with small businesses in America who also need good talent. It's like the perfect mix. So we're putting good companies in America with good people in Ukraine, and we're kind of bringing them together. And it has been, to me, that's the most rewarding thing about it. And I think it's the reason why we're doing so well.
What is the goal of this business?
Goal of this business? is to completely disrupt the traditional outsourcing countries. So everywhere in Southeast Asia, instead of them saying, I'm going to go to Southeast Asia, Philippines, Bangladesh, India to hire, that's my daughter talking over there, she's agreeing with this. Instead of going to India, Philippines, Bangladesh, or anywhere else, we want to hire from Ukraine. That's the goal. Totally disrupt the traditional virtual assistant outsourcing. Okay. America, Canada, Mexico, Colombia, Thailand, Qatar. That's pretty much everywhere else in the world besides Europe. From Europe, UK, Spain, France, Holland, Germany, Czech Republic, Austria, Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, Croatia, Italy, Montenegro, Ukraine, Turkey. Oh yeah, Turkey. I do like Turkey. I've been to quite a few in Europe now, and I've lost track of all of them for sure. I definitely can't remember. If I had a map, I could definitely point them all out, but I think that's about right. As far as which ones I like the most, I mean, obviously I really like Ukraine. I quite like Poland as well. I would say probably the favorite place that I've visited that I've always enjoyed going back to is actually Istanbul. For some reason, I think it's just very, very fascinating between European on one side and Asian on another. It's like this huge cultural melting pot. The food is really good. I've always enjoyed it a lot. I mean, it's just a very interesting city with a lot to see. I like cities that are on the water, and that one has just a lot of interesting views no matter where you are in the city. So I would say Istanbul is probably the place, like tourist-wise, I've really enjoyed and would definitely continue to go back to. Definitely interested in going to the Middle East more. Like I really liked Doha. I thought it was interesting, and like I said, I've liked my trips to Turkey, so I think we're going to Dubai later this year in November, and I would like to continue to explore parts of that region. For some reason, it just interests me quite a bit. I went ziplining over the Dnipro River in Kiev. I thought that was maybe kind of sketchy and a little bit dangerous. Other cool experiences? No, not ones that I should talk about on camera, probably. Thailand, riding a scooter around some sketchy mountain roads. That would stand out for sure. I would say that the thing that impacts daily life the most in Europe versus America is the lack of car culture out here. So in the United States, everyone, if you got to get somewhere, you get in the car and you drive. Even if it's like to the coffee shop, you get in the car and you drive to the coffee shop, you sit at the coffee shop, get in the car and you drive home. I have found that Europe, I'm going to kind of just classify everything as European here. It's like the cities are walkable. Like you look out this window now and there's so many restaurants, bars, cafes within a kilometer of here. So it's so easy to just text your friend and say, hey, you want to go get dinner? You want to go grab a drink? It just makes things so cohesive and it makes things just nice. It's a different way of living. It's a way that I certainly prefer. I'm actually kind of thinking I would like to have a car at some point out here now that I have a family, but I would never drive it. It would be like a once a week thing, like, oh, we're going out of the city to the lake or to the beach or something. Day to day, I would never touch that car. I truly, there's no point. I would much rather not sit in traffic and ride a bike or walk or even sit on a tram. Like I'm not such a snob. I'm not above that. If it's faster and I'm able to do work on my phone or do something productive while I'm on that tram as opposed to just sitting in traffic, I'll take that every time. When you are an expat and you move abroad, it's always going to be a very different culture. And I'm of the belief that you need to integrate yourself to the culture that you moved to as opposed to bringing your culture into that country. After all, there's a reason you moved to that country. So when I see like Americans going abroad who are like throwing fits because they can't get food prepared the way they want or something isn't working the same way, it just makes me roll my eyes, obviously. And I've now lived abroad for 7 years out here. And certainly I think I could say like Ukraine is definitely very different than America, but a lot of things are to be cherished and appreciated in those differences, and it's a different way of life. It's one that I prefer, but I do understand that I'm in someone else's country and I need to adjust to their customs and how they do things as opposed to someone bending their will to mine. I'm not saying I'm perfect by any means. Certainly I still try to get what I need out of life, but if you're moving somewhere, it's for that reason. It's for that culture. It's for that country. So why would you change it? If you want to have your own culture, just go back to your own country. I would say that every European country has their own kind of unique cuisine, but a lot of people like Americans would think it's a lot of just meat and potatoes. And sometimes you do kind of go from country to country and it's like, okay, a dumpling here is a dumpling there. It's like, okay, maybe the shape's a little different or the filling's a little bit different. But the food in Eastern Europe is very good. Ukraine had a lot of good dishes. I like chicken kiev, I like borscht, I like vareniki. Every country has something that's usually good. And most of them have good like international food now too. Like if you're in a major city, you know, we're in Warsaw right now, there's a Thai place down the street, there's an Asian place, there's a, you know, burger place. You can get pretty much anything in the world. I always get a little concerned though when I start seeing cities that have like lots of KFCs and McDonald's and Starbucks. So it's kind of like that Western influence is really coming here. And there's a lot of downsides to that. We won't get into all of those, but you can pretty much get anything you want, really. It doesn't taste better, but I tell you this, like if you go have a burger at McDonald's in the United States and then you fly over here to Eastern Europe and you have a burger, get the same thing the next day at the same place, I promise you're gonna think it's different. Like I go have a burger in the States and like I can't stop thinking about that burger for the next week. I'm like, I need more, like a crack at it. And I think that's because there are some chemicals that are not allowed here in Europe that are totally okay in the US. So sometimes you gotta wonder like what on earth is going in some of the food in the United States versus out here. I do think it is a little bit more addicting. Stuff tastes fresher out here though, for sure. Like a good example is Americans will shop for a week or 2 weeks and they'll just put it in their freezer. You can like take a steak and you can put it in your fridge in the United States and it'll be fine for 5-7 days. You put meat here, like in your fridge, like you better be cooking that within 2 days because on day 3, you're gonna open that thing and it's gonna smell raunchy and then you probably can't eat it. So I've noticed definitely the food spoils a lot faster out here as well. I celebrate New Year's now, which was not really something in the States. Like in the States, you just go out on New Year's and you drink a lot. That's pretty much all it is. Whereas out here, it's kind of like the Christmas and more of a family event. So I would say that's probably the one that sticks out to me the most. Also International Women's Day. So that's kind of a thing out here in Eastern Europe that it's March 8th, right? Yeah, it's March 8th. And you basically, it's like Valentine's Day in the States, but it's nowhere near as commercial. It's all women. So, you know, you would buy flowers for your daughter, your grandma, your wife, your mother, and it's not as commercial. There's not any expectations to, you know, buy an expensive piece of jewelry per se or go out to some super fancy dinner. It's more just about at least recognizing it. Yeah, that's really about it, but I'd say those two stand out. And I don't do Valentine's Day, so that's nice. We don't do that. It's been replaced with a holiday that I think is quite a bit nicer. I think something that always stood out to me when I lived in Ukraine was the underground flower shops. So basically, you know, you walk down the stairs to go into the metro and they'd have these, you know, kind of dirty, I'm not gonna lie, like flower shops where they would have just thousands of flowers. You know, we're talking half a football field. This would be just full of people selling flowers. And it was on those days, like, you know, International Women's Day, that metro would just be flooded over with flowers. And of course, you know, everyone running to go buy flowers, and it was just cool to see. So I'd say those holidays. Yeah, it's your whole world will basically turn upside down, I mean, to a certain extent. So I would say like Europe-wise, moving out here, things maybe a little more like bureaucratic in some ways. Like, you know, I remember going to some government offices in Ukraine. It was just like horrible experiences. But I also have had really, really good experiences out there. And I think it's probably better than the US overall, like faster and more organized. But yeah, major cultural differences. I've noticed probably my biggest pet peeve is people out here stand very, very close to you in line and will breathe down your neck. Like I remember being in Ukraine in some supermarkets and some babushkas are just like, you know, this far away from the back of my neck and I can feel their breath on me and I'm just like turning around saying, like, what are you doing? Like you have so much space behind you. Do you have to do this? But it just is what it is. Things are going to be different, but of course there's always going to be challenges. The funny challenge for me was in Ukraine. So I'm from California. I'd seen snow maybe 3 times in my life before I moved to Ukraine and hadn't ever really seen ice. So that first winter and even still now, I hate ice. I hate walking on it and I'm like Bambi. Like out there like a deer, just with my legs flailing around. It makes me just, I hate it. I'm so bad at walking on the ice, especially if it's going downhill. I'd rather just get on my butt and slide, honestly. So that I would say was one of my greatest challenges from moving out to a colder climate was dealing with the ice. Don't always just follow this trend. So you can go and you can find a course on how to drop ship, how to day trade. You can find a way to make money anyway. And you gotta be really, really careful about who you decide to listen to, because most people, the only business they have and the only business they're actually ever been successful at is a business teaching others how to make a business by teaching others. And it's ridiculous. It's a huge pyramid scheme now where someone's at the top, they teach you how to make money online, and the only way they've ever made money online is by teaching others how to make money online. They've never actually built a business. So that is the most important thing, is actually finding someone who's teaching something that they're actually doing. And as far as that goes, I would say best off with a service. So don't try to go sell cheap Chinese stuff in e-commerce. Don't race to the bottom by trying to, get Fiverr gigs. Figure out one thing you're good at. So let's say you're good at designing websites. Go out, find a couple clients, build a couple websites, get some case studies, some testimonials, and then slowly but surely try to get yourself out of fulfillment. So instead of you designing those websites, you bring on a web designer. That frees up all your time to then focus on bringing in more web design clients. So get yourself out of that wheel where you're getting clients, fulfilling clients, and then you're stuck, you stop the sales, you stop the outreach because you're too busy doing the fulfillment. Get someone in, do the fulfillment for you, and then slowly but surely build out the business in the company. And also, last piece of advice, charge more. Like, the more you charge, the better people you're gonna attract. It is hard to do this initially, but you will be a lot better in the long term if you have higher prices, because trust me when I say the cheapest clients are by far the worst clients. The cheapest client who you're getting $500 from is gonna say, can I have this, 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 and this? And by the way, can I have your firstborn child? And maybe you'll come and give me a back rub while you're at it. The client who you're charging $5,000 is just gonna say like, great, looks good. Where do I pay? So always go higher prices, higher level clients will make things much, much easier. So as far as delegating tasks, the number one tip I can give is simply to make videos and training. And then there's also some really good tools like ChatGPT now that can build out SOPs for you. So the more documentation you have, the better off. And then I also like to do something, basically, when I first bring someone on, I will let them watch me do it. And then after that, I will let them do it while watching them very closely. And then finally, I will basically be on a screen share with them. They're doing the job, but I'm also there if they have any questions. So it's kind of like the 3-step tier of training someone. So I like to do that. As far as trusting people, as a business owner, you have to. And it's really hard. A lot of business owners really struggle with this. They struggle to take their hands off the wheel. They have built this business, it's their baby. But at the end of the day, what you want to be doing is taking back your time and not investing more and more time into the business. Because as soon as you start getting rid of all the stupid, monotonous, just dumb tasks, your mind is free. You can do so much more. You can focus on the higher leverage stuff. And I see so many business owners who, their time is worth $100 an hour, and yet they're doing a $5 an hour task, which is just insane to me. Like, let's say this task, it's 1 hour, and you're gonna get paid $100 to do it, but you can have someone else do it for $5. Wouldn't you rather take the $95 and not have to do it? Like, it's so obvious to me, but so many people are so obsessed with it that they just can't let go. So hire the right people, give them the right training, and then get your hands off and allow them to do the job that you actually hired them to do. It will make things so much better for you in the long term. I try not to do business with friends. So that's kind of my way of looking at it. Like, it's always going to take time to build trust with an employee. Like, these days, yeah, I would feel very, very comfortable handing off, days of work to my team without me being even there. And actually, just last month, my mom actually passed away, and I went back to California for 3 weeks, and the team handled everything recruitment wise. I was almost offline, just not doing anything. So I know that they've been trained properly and can, but we were talking just a little bit here before, and you said if you were opening a restaurant, would you hire your friend or would you hire someone you didn't know? And I think that's definitely maybe a Ukrainian thing where they would probably hire their friend because it's sometimes maybe not a super high trust in that regard. I wouldn't, because I don't want to hire friends for the most part. I don't want to do business with friends. I want to just hire people.